discovered my girlfriend's secret affair with her coworker, decided to turn the tables. So, here's a tale I never thought I'd be telling, especially not to the vast void of the internet. But life has a funny way of handing you plot twists that would make even the most seasoned soap opera writer blush. I'm a 32-year-old guy who thought he had it all figured out. A steady job, a cozy apartment, and a girlfriend, Emily, who I'd been with for 5 years. We met in college, bonded over our mutual love for bad puns and spicy food, and I genuinely believed we were endgame. Emily works in marketing at a mid-sized company downtown. She's always been ambitious, which is one of the things I admired about her. Lately, though, she'd been putting in extra hours, coming home late, and seemed more attached to her phone than usual. I chalked it up to a big project she mentioned, a campaign that could potentially land her a promotion. Being the supportive boyfriend, I didn't question it. In hindsight, I might as well have handed her a permission slip to do whatever she wanted. One evening, Emily mentioned a new coworker, Alex, who had joined her team. She spoke about him in passing, a creative genius, she said, who had some revolutionary ideas for their project. I didn't think much of it. After all, discussing work was a normal part of our daily debriefs. But then she started dropping his name more frequently. Alex this, Alex that. Again, I dismissed any nagging feelings because trust is the cornerstone of any relationship, right? Then came the first red flag. We were out for dinner and her phone kept buzzing with messages. She glanced at it, smiled subtly, and slipped it back into her purse without mentioning who it was. Curiosity got the better of me, and I casually asked if everything was okay. She nodded, saying it was just some work stuff, and changed the topic. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. A week later, she announced she had to go on an overnight business trip for a client meeting. It struck me as odd since she rarely traveled for work, but I didn't want to seem controlling by questioning her. So, I wished her a safe trip and even helped pack her bags. That night, alone in our apartment, I couldn't shake off the unease. I tried distracting myself with movies, video games, even attempted to cook a new recipe, which ended up being a disaster, but that's beside the point. The following day, while scrolling through social media, a photo popped up that caught my eye. It was posted by one of Emily's co-workers, showing a group of them at a local bar. The caption read, "Team outing after crushing the presentation." There, front and center, was Emily, clinking glasses with her team. And standing next to her, a bit too close for comfort, was presumably Alex. Confusion turned to suspicion. If she was supposed to be out of town, why was she at a bar in the city? Deciding not to jump to conclusions, I texted her asking how the trip was going. She replied a few hours later saying the meeting went well and she was heading to bed early due to exhaustion. The lie stung more than I expected. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I decided to dig a little deeper. I reached out to a mutual friend who worked in the same company but in a different department. Casually, I brought up the supposed business trip. She seemed puzzled and said there were no out-of-town meetings scheduled, as far as she knew. That was the confirmation I dreaded. Feeling like a detective in a bad crime show, I considered my options. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but another part wanted concrete evidence. I didn't want to accuse her based on assumptions, so I decided to pay a visit to her office, under the guise of a surprise lunch date. Arriving at her workplace, I waited in the lobby and texted her, saying I was in the area and thought we could grab lunch. She took longer than usual to respond, finally texting back that she was swamped and couldn't step away. Fair enough, I thought, but I wasn't leaving without some answers. As I was about to head out, I spotted her exiting the elevator with Alex. They were engrossed in conversation, laughing, completely oblivious to my presence. They walked past me, and I couldn't help but notice the way she looked at him, a sparkle in her eyes that I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Deciding I'd seen enough, I left without making my presence known. On the way home, a whirlwind of emotions hit me: anger, betrayal, sadness. But amid all that, a strange sense of calm washed over me. If this was the reality, I needed to face it head-on. Back at the apartment, I started formulating a plan. Rather than confronting her outright, I wanted to see how far she'd take this charade. Over the next few days, I acted as if everything was normal. Meanwhile, I kept an eye on her social media, her moods, her stories about work. The lies became more frequent, and each one was like adding fuel to a fire I was carefully tending. Then came the tipping point. She told me she'd be working late on a Friday night for a critical project deadline. I pretended to buy it, wished her good luck, and even sent her a takeaway meal to the office as a thoughtful gesture. The delivery guy called me, saying no one by her name was at the office and the building was closed for the night. That was it. Time for action. Instead of stewing in bitterness, I decided to channel my energy into something more productive, or at least more satisfying. I packed a weekend bag, booked a room at a nice hotel, and decided to enjoy some me time. Before leaving, I wrote her a letter, not an angry rant, but a calm explanation that I knew about her lies and that I needed some space. I left the letter on the kitchen counter, where she'd be sure to find it. I spent the weekend indulging in room service, spa treatments, and catching up on shows I'd missed. It was oddly therapeutic. On Sunday evening, my phone was flooded with messages and missed calls from Emily. The texts ranged from concerned to apologetic to accusatory. I didn't respond. When I finally returned home, she was there, looking a mix of relieved and anxious. She started explaining, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that she and Alex were just friends. I listened quietly, letting her tie herself in knots with excuses. When she finished, I calmly told her about all the inconsistencies, the lies about the business trip, the fake late nights at work. Her facade crumbled. She admitted that things had gotten complicated with Alex, that she didn't mean for it to happen, that she still loved me. It was like watching a poorly scripted drama unfold. Part of me wanted to yell, to express the hurt and anger boiling inside, but I kept my composure. I told her that trust, once broken, isn't easily mended, that I needed time to process everything. She asked if we could work through it, go to counseling, anything to fix what was broken. I said I wasn't sure, and that I needed space. Over the next few weeks, we lived like awkward roommates. She tried to make amends, cooking my favorite meals, leaving little notes, but it all felt hollow. Meanwhile, I focused on myself, reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with, and even picked up a new hobby, photography. Capturing moments through a lens was strangely healing. One day, while out taking photos at a park, I bumped into an old acquaintance, Sarah. We hadn't seen each other since college. We got to talking, and it felt refreshingly easy. No pretense, no hidden agendas, just two people catching up. Back at home, Emily noticed the change in me. Perhaps she sensed that I was moving on in ways she couldn't reach. She suggested we have a serious talk. We sat down, and she expressed genuine remorse. She said she'd ended things with Alex and was willing to do whatever it took to rebuild our relationship. I appreciated her honesty, but told her that forgiveness doesn't guarantee reconciliation. The trust was gone, and without it, any relationship is built on shaky ground. She asked if there was someone else. I admitted that I'd reconnected with Sarah, but insisted it wasn't about replacing her. It was about finding my own happiness. In the end, we agreed it was best to part ways. It wasn't a dramatic breakup filled with slammed doors or tearful goodbyes. It was quiet, almost anticlimactic. She moved out a week later, leaving behind an empty closet and a lot of memories. Adjusting to life without her was strange but liberating. I dove deeper into photography, started a blog to document my journey, and even began traveling on weekends to nearby towns to capture new scenes. As for Emily, we stayed in minimal contact to sort out practical matters. She sent a long email once, detailing how sorry she was and how she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive her someday. I didn't reply, not out of malice, but because some things are better left unsaid. Reflecting on the whole experience, I realized that people change, feelings fade, and sometimes, despite our best efforts, relationships fall apart. It's easy to cast oneself as the victim, but I also recognize that perhaps I'd become complacent, taking our relationship for granted in ways I hadn't noticed. Meeting Sarah again was an unexpected silver lining. We started spending more time together, not rushing into anything, just enjoying each other's company. She had her own stories of heartbreak and lessons learned, which made our conversations all the more genuine. Looking back, I could choose to be bitter about being cheated on, but instead, I saw it as a catalyst for personal growth. Life threw a curveball, and while I didn't hit a home run, I learned how to swing better. So there it is, my little saga of love, betrayal, and self-discovery. If nothing else, maybe it serves as a reminder that even when things fall apart, there's always a chance to rebuild, perhaps into something even better than before.